What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Private Outpost. Today we're going to be taking a look at this word called U.S. citizen, and more importantly, what a private citizen actually is. So we're going to be defining that, but we're going to be defining it through case law, so what the judges' decisions were and what they had to say. We're going to just be reading case law to actually get our answers. So you can look forward to something pretty juicy here, but let's start out first with where the original definition comes from of U.S. citizen. So we have a few definitions right on Google. This takes us here to 42 U.S.C. 9102.18, where it says a U.S. citizen is a individual who is a citizen of the United States by law, birth, or naturalization, and B, by any federal, state, or local government of the United States, or any entity of any such government, or C, any corporation, partnership, association, or other entity. So this is how your businesses can become a U.S. citizen. A corporation can be a U.S. citizen. So that's one definition. The IRS has a definition as well, but they're usually going off the United States Code for that definition. Now, there's a few case laws we need to look at. The first thing I need you to know, though, is in United States versus Slanter, they made it very clear that unless the defendant can establish that he is not a citizen of the United States, the IRS possesses the authority to attempt to determine his federal tax liability. So they can make presumptions about you. And it's the first thing you're going to notice when you get into court is, especially by the way they're asking you questions, they're allowed to make presumptions, and you have to rebut those presumptions if you know what you're doing. So hopefully by the time we read the rest of this case law, you will know what you're doing, because we're talking about your original status. So the slaughterhouse cases, this is 83 U.S. 36. This took place in 1872, and we're going to work our way up. Now, there's not very many, as you can see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 more case laws to look at, and I'm just highlighting paragraphs within each one of them. So as we read this, you'll have a better understanding of what these judges have said in these cases. It is quite clear then that there is a citizenship of the United States and a citizenship of a state, which are distinct from each other and which depend on different characteristics or circumstances in the individual. So that's what we learned in 1872. And then this takes us to another case called United States versus Anthony, and this is Susan B. Anthony. This took place in 1873. It says the 14th Amendment creates and defines citizenship of the United States. It has long been contended that it has been held by many learned authorities and had never been judicially decided to the contrary, that there is no such thing as a citizen of the United States except as a condition arose from citizenship of some state. No mode exists, it was said, of obtaining a citizenship of the United States except by first becoming a citizen of some state. This question is now at rest. And this is why they don't talk about it much, is because back in 1873, they had determined this already. So that's why you won't hear about it much today, is because they're expecting you to go back and know what this already said. Now, continuing on, in Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution of the United States, it had already been provided that the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. The rights of citizens of the states and of citizens of the United States are each granted by these different provisions. That these rights are separate and distinct was held in the slaughterhouse cases, which I just read to you, recently decided by the Supreme Court. The rights of citizens of the state, as such, are not under the consideration of the 14th Amendment. They stand as they did before the adoption of the 14th Amendment and are fully guaranteed by other provisions. The right of citizens of the states have been the subject of judicial decision on more than one occasion. These are the fundamental privileges and immunities belonging of right to the citizens of all free governments, such as the right of life, liberty, and the right to acquire and possess property, to transact business, to pursue happiness in one's own manner, subject to such restraint as the government may adjudge to be necessary for the general good. And so there is another determination of state rights. And then we finally get here in 1884 to Elk versus Wilkins. This is 12 U.S. 94. And in here it says, born therefore in the territory under the dominion and within jurisdictional limits of the United States, plaintiff has acquired, as was his undoubtable right, a residence in one of the states with her consent, and is subject to taxation and all other burdens imposed by her upon residents of every race. If he did not acquire national citizenship on abandoning his tribe and becoming, by residents of one of the states, subject to the complete jurisdiction of the United States, then the 14th Amendment has wholly failed to accomplish in respect of the Indian race what we think was intended by it. And there is still in this country a despised and rejected class of persons with no nationality whatsoever, who, born in our territory, owing no allegiance to any foreign power, and subject as residents of the states to the burdens of government, are not yet members of any political community, nor entitled to any rights, privileges, or immunities of citizens of the United States. And what they're talking about are a class of people that aren't subject to the 14th Amendment because they're not U.S. citizens. They potentially only have a birth certificate. They're still born here. They're not immigrants. And I believe this is somewhat of the lines it's talking about, because it's relating to Indians in tribes, and they're sort of in that circumstance. And then the last case law we're going to look at is Gardena versus the Board of Registrars of Jefferson County. And in this case, it says that there are then, under our Republican form of government, two classes of citizens, one of the United States and one of the state. One class of citizenship may exist in a person without the other, as in the case of a resident of the District of Columbia. But both classes usually exist in the same person. The federal Constitution, by this amendment, has undertaken to say who shall be citizens of both the states and the United States. Prior to this amendment, the states could probably have determined respectfully who were citizens of each through naturalization. It has been exclusively a national subject rather than a state since the federal Constitution was first adopted. So there you have it. There are two classes of citizens, both a state citizen, which we call private citizens, and that's the whole subject of this video, is understanding what is a private citizen. It's your state citizenship. It happened before you actually got a social security number. You were given a birth certificate of that state. So it makes sense that you have an original status, and then when you put on the U.S. citizenship hat, you have another status. One's not taxed. In the private sector, your private status is not taxed. Then when you put that hat on, your transactions then are taxed. So that's the distinction, that's the difference, and this is the case law that shows you the difference between public and private. Drop a like on the video if you enjoy this content, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.